This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, so this Shabbos was Shabbos Nevarchim Adar Aleph, so we got to get going. I want to tell you a lamdus on a kasha of the Chasam Sofer. This kasha, we spoke at the kasha many years ago, and I was listening to the recording last night, and some of you were present at that shiur many years ago. We just said the kasha. I'm going to tell you the kasha, and we're going to give a new answer. We're going to give a geschmack answer to it. Okay. Are you allowed? What position do you need to be in to read the Megillah? What? To read the Megillah. Shulchan Aruch says in Tafresh Sadi, Kari Adam Megillah, Bein Oimed, Bein Yoshev. Lo Yikra B'Tzibor Yoshev L'Chatchila B'nei Kavrat Tzibor. But Me'ikr Hadin, you're allowed to be sitting to read the Megillah. You're allowed to be sitting. It's just not covered tzibor. But Me'ikr Hadin, you're allowed to be sitting. Question. How about Hallel? What position do you need to be in to say Hallel?
Omed.
You have to be Omed. What about Birchas HaGoimel? What position do you need to make Birchas HaGoimel? The Eliyah Rabbah brings, in the name of the Rambam, Goimel needs to be standing. Why? Since Goimel is called Hallel, and Hallel has to be standing, so therefore Goimel has to be standing. Now, we all know, the Gemara Megillah on Daf Yadalet asks, why don't you say Hallel on Purim? And the Gemara gives many answers, but the Rambam codifies the answer of Rava, Kriyasa Zu Heilela. Reading the Megillah is Hallel. Did you ever notice there's no Hallel on Purim? You notice that? We don't say Hallel on Purim. You knew that? It's good. That means you're sane. You're awake. You're not drunk. There's no Hallel on Purim. Reading the Megillah is Hallel. So if I would ask, well, if reading the Megillah is Hallel, then maybe you should stand for reading the Megillah. So that maybe you would say, no, reading the Megillah is called Hallel, but it's not actually Hallel. So if it's called Hallel, maybe you don't have to stand. But the Eliyah Rabbah says you have to stand for Goimel because it's called Hallel. So if you have to stand for Goimel because it's called Hallel, then you should have to stand for reading the Megillah, Kriyasa Zu Hilila. You know whose kasha this is?
It's too long.
Shaus Chivas Chasam Sofer Siman Nav. So you say, really, you have to, but what can you do? Who could stand for 45 minutes?
The Pesach by the Seder we sit by the Hallel.
That's a good question. Pesach by the Seder, we sit by Hallel.
We don't say bracha.
So that's a question we've dealt with over the years, but one of the answers to that is the Hallel we say in Pesach is a part of matzah. Because matzah is lechem oini, lechem sha'onim alav dvarim harbe. So since matzah is b'yeshiva, the Hallel is also b'yeshiva. But the shaila is, if we stand for Goimel, because Goimel is called Hallel, we should stand for Megillah, because Megillah is called Hallel. This is the kasha of the Chasam Sofer, Shaus Chivas Chasam Sofer, Siman Nun Aleph. We asked this question, we learned this question many years ago. You ready?
Do you have to stand for Parsha Yotzar?
You should stand for Parsha Yotzar, yes. It's a Berchas HaShavach. Now, you ready for this Geshmaka Kasha? The Mishnah Megillah begins. Megillah Nikres, B'Yud Aleph, B'Yud Beis, B'Yud Gimel, B'Yud Daled, B'Tesvav, Lo Pachos, Lo Yoser. By the way, if you add up 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you get 65. The name of Hashem, Aleph, Daled, Nun, Yud. Megillah Nikres, B'Yud Aleph, B'Yud Beis, B'Yud Gimel, B'Yud Tesvav. You lay in the Megillah with the Shem Hashem of Adnos, below Pachot, below Yoter, not 10 and not 16. 10 and 16 is Shem Havaya. There's no Shem Havaya in the Megillah. So you say there's no Adnos in the Megillah either. Melech is Adnos. Okay, that's the Gra. Fine. So the Gemara says you lay in the Megillah on 11, you could lay in at 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So the Gemara asks who invented 11, 12, 13, 14? The Gemara says it must have been Anshe Knesset HaGdoila, because if it was later Chachamim, how could they have been Oiker, what earlier Chachamim did? So the shaila is like this. Frekt of Shlomo Kluger. How could you say Hallel on 11, 12, 13? How could you read the Megillah 11, 12, 13? You want to read the Megillah? Read the Megillah. but reading the Megillah is Hallel. You're mechuyev to say Hallel. And you can only say Hallel on a day that the miracle happened. So how could you be yotzei the inyan of saying Hallel by laning the Megillah 11, 12, 13? You want to say Anshe Kazakdala said, yeah, you could read the Megillah, great. But what about the fact that you're really mechuyev to say Hallel on Purim? So now what, if you lane it 11, 12, 13, on the 14th you have to say Hallel? That's the kasha of the Chachma Shleimer.
Doesn't the Gemara say you may hand, it says like darshans from the fact that
Zmanim. Right, that you're that only teaches me 14 and 15.
No, it's
Oh.
Joshua over there of how it adds another 2 and why not after, why not 16, 17, because...
Of a Yavar.
Right.
So you're saying, okay.
There's a drasha.
But you're saying there's a drasha?
That's easy.
It's not an actual drasha because the Gemara says Anshe Knesset Hagdoila. Okay, so I'm gonna tweak the question a little bit. Okay. The Gemara asks. The Gemara asks, who made the 11, 12, and 13? It couldn't have been the Chachamim because how could they be Oiker an earlier takana? The Gemara should have. Anyway, they couldn't have done it. It had to be Anshe Knesset. Because if it was other Chachamim, then how in the world could you do it on 11, 12, 13? But how you yotzei Hallel? How could later Chachamim say that you read the Megillah on a day the miracle didn't happen, but how would you be able to be yotzei Hallel on that day? Okay? That's a kasha of Shlomo Kluger. So there's a Sofer, Birchas Rafael, who answers the question as follows. Right? You hear the question? Question is, if the whole reason you don't say Hallel on Purim is because Kriyasa Zu Leila, how could be yotzei the Chiyuv of Hallel? By the way, what would be if you don't have a Megillah on Purim? So there's a famous Meiri that the Chidah found that if you don't have a Megillah on Purim, you have to say Hallel. So if you have to say Hallel, then how in the world could you read the Megillah on 11, 12, and 13? What's going to be with the Hallel?
With the bracha?
And with a minion.
No, not with the bracha. Because they weren't masaking it. Now, the Birchas Rafael quotes the Kalbai, who says, "Ein oimrim Hallel b'Purim, lefi shekriyasa hi hilula, koloimar, zu hoisa kavanas hakriya." That's the purpose of the reading. Kedei sheyizachru hanes, v'yitnu shevach v'hoida, la'Hashem yisbarach. So it's mashma from the Kalbai. Reading the Megillah is not Hallel. It's not that the reading of the Megillah is Hallel. It's just by reading the Megillah, you'll remember the miracle, you'll come to praise, so you don't need to say Hallel. It's not that reading the Megillah is Hallel, it's that if you read the Megillah, it obviates the need to say Hallel.
Sofer.
It's not that the Kriya is a Hallel, but by being Mefarsim the Nes, you're putter from saying Hallel. So it could be that the villagers who read the Megillah early, even though it's not the Zman of Hallel, once they read the Megillah and the miracle is performed, they're putter from Hallel. So this would be an answer to Chasam Sofer's kasha. Chasam Sofer wanted to know that according to the Eliyah Rabbah, that you have to stand for Goimel, because Goimel is called Hallel, then why wouldn't you have to stand for the Megillah? No, it's not that Kriyas HaMegillah is the Hallel, it's that by reading the Megillah, it exempts you from saying the Hallel. So of course, so you don't have to stand. You only have to stand for Hallel. Kriyas HaMegillah is not Hallel, it's that by saying the Megillah, it exempts you from the obligation to say Hallel.
So the villagers should travel to a better place to get the ideal of this. To get that day. Like if I should voluntarily try to find the ride from.
What? No.
Based on what it's a tour.
It's a tour. It's a tour.
It's not
No, it'd be ideal.
It's not ideal.
I mean, it's a tour even for someone who reads it on the 14th.
Yeah, but if I wanted to be ideal, like to get the best mahadran, I shouldn't do it on that day.
Well, why is it any less?
Because in other words, fine. My obligation is relieved. But like, am I getting? In other words, I want.
But even a guy who reads it on the 14th, even a guy who reads it on the 14th,
right.
He's pattering himself from Hallel.
I don't want to patter myself.
So even a guy on the 14th, maybe he should say Hallel, right?
Right.
Maybe on the 14th should say Hallel.
What he's saying is it doesn't make a difference 11 or 14. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's not that the reading of the Megillah is the Kriyas HaHallel. It's that once the Megillah is read, it obviates the need for Hallel. So it shouldn't matter what day you say it. Okay, I just wanted to revisit that question of Chasam Sofer. Okay, Rabbi, say have a great day. Kol Tov.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.